our 30-year anniversary this year, so I invite you to browse through our little exhibition and maybe read our Augustine magazine. The event today will be live streamed. None of the visitors will be in the picture, but if you speak into the microphone, you will be recorded. So if you prefer not to be recorded, just don't speak into the microphones. Now I'm very happy to welcome our guests today at DePaul. They will present the book Two Cities, An Aesthetic Approach to Ethical Responsibility. And I wish you a very engaging evening.
Yeah, thank you very much for this short introduction. Good evening, everybody, and a warm welcome to the book presentation. We heard it just before, Two Cities, An Aesthetic Approach to Ethical Responsibility. I also would like to welcome my guests on the panel. We have here Irena Lagator Pejović, Elke Krasny, and Monika Leisch-Kiesl. So I'm very happy to be together with you here, and I'm looking forward to our discussion. Many thanks also to the DePaul team for organizing this event. And one more information I would like to mention, this book presentation is hosted by the Faculty of Philosophy and Art History of the Catholic Private University in Linz. My name is Allerstorfer-Hertel, and I have the pleasure to moderate this talk. The book has been published by the Verlag für Moderne Kunst in September this year and includes an introduction by Miško Šuvaković, a main text by Monika Leisch-Kiesl, and an afterword by Elke Krasny. All texts are published in 3 languages, in German, in English, and Montenegrin. Yes, what is it about? So I bring the first slide for showing you what is it about. The core issues of this text picture volume are 2 outstanding artistic works. Irena Lagator Pejovic's conceptual artwork, Knowledge of the Limited Responsibility Society, and Christine de Pizan's book, Livre de la Cité des Dames, in English, the Book of the City of Ladies. So on the one hand, we are dealing with a contemporary installation, an ongoing project that Irena Lagator Pejović started in 2009. And on the other hand, we are confronted with an illustrated autograph from the early Renaissance period that dates from about 1405 and that was written by the Italian-born French court writer Christine de Pizan. In the book Two Cities, Monika Leisch-Kiesl compares the relationship of ethics and aesthetics in the artistic and scientific practices of Christine de Pizan and the artist Irena Lagator Pejović. In his introduction, Miško Šuvaković undertakes a journey into the histories of books and also cities, spanning 2 different epochs and eco-political constellations. In her afterword, Elke Krasny provides a feminist reflection on the ethics of urban responsibility under the conditions of capital. Yes, and in the course of our talk, we will explore topics that connect these 2 artists. For example, books, city building, the role of women within the society, ethics and responsibility, but also economy and capitalism. So before we start our discussion, I would like to introduce my guests on the panel. And I will make this rather brief because the biographies are very extensive. So I bring only an abstract and show some more detailed information at the slide. I would like to start with Elke Krasny. She's a cultural theorist, curator, and professor of art and education at the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna. Her main research areas include issues of care and social reproduction, social and ecological justice, transnational feminisms, contemporary art, architecture, curatorial practice, and art education. I continue with Irena Lagator Pejović. She's an artist living in Cetinje and Podgorica in Montenegro. She's an artist, but also an art theorist and associate professor at the University of Donja, Gorica in Podgorica, Montenegro. She's one of the 7 awardees of the UNESCO Prize for the Promotion of the Arts in 2002. And yeah, we will learn a lot about your art and artistic practice this evening, and I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, Monika Leisch-Kiesl. is an art historian, philosopher, and professor for art history and aesthetics at the KU Private University in Linz. Her main research areas comprise medieval book illumination, gender studies, the relationship between image, text, and medium, the art of the 20th and 21st century, drawing, art theory, and aesthetics, as well as inter- and transculturality. And last but not least, also very important, Christina Pizan. I already mentioned some basic data. She was an Italian-born French court writer for King Charles VI of France. And her works in prose and also poetry are considered to be some of the earliest feminist writings. Yes, and I would like to start our discussion with a first and rather quick round, and I would like to begin with you, Irena. Have you ever heard of the Renaissance writer Christina Pizan before Monika involved you in her project?
Thank you, Julia. That's really an interesting question. Well, when I met Monika, it was in 2019 in Linz on the occasion of my exhibition in the context of the Catholic Private University. And during my artist talk given at Kepler Salon, I was precisely speaking of this installation, which was also in the exhibition. And afterwards, Monika approached to me and we started the discussion where it was the first time really when I heard about Christine de Pizan. I must admit that, of course, before I didn't know about Christine, especially not of this kind of feminist, we can say today feminist, approach in the manuscript handwritten books. And I was very curious, especially when later on, after Monika's idea to write this essay, I looked and researched deeper about Christine when I discovered the really, like Monika says, fascinating potential connection on the level of topics which Christine was interested back then in, and it was rectitude, responsibility, of course also society, but also justice, which is very then close also to my work. And it is after certain discussions we further had that Monika started to write this essay.
Thank you very much. So I would like to continue with Elke Krasny, if I may. What are your associations to or with Christine Pizan?
So maybe we start in the 1980s. That's a long time ago. That's when I studied, and we didn't. So I studied here in the city, and I studied philosophy and literature. And philosophy, there weren't too many female people mentioned. I would say basically maybe none. And literature studies, that was a bit different. Not fantastic, but she was one of the people who was being mentioned. And I think the ways in which I would say feminist scholarship at the time was very much concerned with unearthing or excavating what we could refer to as proto-feminists was probably one of the reasons why this author, who wrote so many centuries ago, was being mentioned. I guess, as you already said, these words that are important for her, and I think they're being translated in different ways. So reason, righteousness, justice, I think they have resonated with many people. I think that also the fact that she was writing about something that is not, but could be, was another reason why a lot of people engaged with her. And the last thing that I would like to add is that, so in literature, maybe like in art history, people like to put things into categories, no? So this is the category of this, and all these things belong to this category. So I guess that you could say that in the context of literature, her writing is being argued as having given reason to the category of what in Roman languages is called querelle des femmes, so the question of the woman or the dispute of women, and in a way making it a question that in heteropatriarchy, those who are female and those who are considered male do not have the same positions in relation to society. So I think this is something that very much goes back to her. And maybe the very last thing which I find impressive is she had to make a living. I mean, so she wasn't a writer who was just writing because it was really so much fun. I mean, maybe she enjoyed it, I have no idea. But she had to earn money. She had 3 children, her father died early, her husband died early, so 1405 was probably quite difficult. So we also, I think, have to understand she belonged to the elite, so she wasn't like a working class person, but someone who was very educated and who could make a living by writing. So I find all this super impressive, that she was able to do it, but I also think we have to understand that she wasn't the only one. I mean, that there was an elite of educated female people. So this is not my time period, so I don't really know enough about it, but I think it's important to understand she was an exception, so that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, thank you very much. Elke Krasny? We have our own. Yeah, Monika, you've been working on Christine de Pizan before. It would be interesting to get to know how did it come about to grapple with conceptual art by Irena and compare it with the books by Christine de Pizan. So what have been your motivations and your interests?
Thank you. So maybe some steps back, also for me it were the 1980s. When I came in touch with Christine de Pizan the first time, it was in Munich and it was in philosophy. The reason was that I had a wonderful professor there, maybe you know her, Elisabeth Gößmann, who did research in women writing, also already in the 1980s. And we were dealing with, yes, the Christian tradition, the querelle des femmes and all this, and always looking, what about the women? And it was the first time that I wrote a really short text about Christine de Pizan then for a lexicon. And then I had other topics to work, and a couple of years ago I had an invitation for an anthology in the USA who was about women, art and philosophy. And they invited me to write about Christine de Pizan, and I was so surprised, and I said, yes, that's great. It would be great to write again about Christine de Pizan. And I just started, and then I was completely discouraged because meanwhile it is such a huge research about Christine de Pizan, the Christine de Pizan Society in the USA, in Europe, and many, many scholars, but mostly Romanistic studies and history studies. Not really art history. And then I said, that's my topic. And the outcome of this study is this book. You have 2 samples there. It is written in German and in English. And here I was focusing on Le Livre de la Cité des Dames. I think you know it. Otherwise, I will tell the content briefly if necessary. But not so much so the content of the book, but what are illustrated manuscripts, and especially autographs. So manuscripts that were illustrated under the supervision, maybe also collaboration of Christine de Pizan. And it was great what I discovered then. So you see a bit here already. And yeah, this was Christine de Pizan, and I discovered there the intense connection of ethics and aesthetics, even in the illustrations. I compared them with contemporary, similar, for example, Boccaccio, who is also part of Querelle des Femmes, with late receptions of this book, and also beautifully illustrated, but not this tense connection between ethic and aesthetics as Christine de Pizan developed it. And then, as Irena told already, when we met the first time in Linz, Kepler Salon, and you presented I have 2 books here if you want to see them later in original, from my collection meanwhile. I have my small city at home. And I asked you, do you know Le Livre de la Cité des Dames? And you said no, and then I said, you should know. And then some years ago, I visited you in your studio in Cetinje, and then I saw this studio is full of books. And then I have again a woman, books, art, so much engaged with social responsibility and so on, that I proposed to write an essay. So, and then we did the book.
Yeah, thank you. So we are already in my next question. I think it's a bit, we have this connecting points because I would have mentioned that you've already been working about the Pizan, and also wanted to cite the title of the book. Monika was showing it already. It was published in 2021 and has the title Lady Reason and the Writing of History, Christine de Pizan's Livre de la Cité des Dames. Yeah? So it's an interesting thing, and now we have the next Pizan project together with Irena Lagator Pejović, very interesting, and I would suggest more to stay in the topic of the genesis of the whole book project, and you also brought an image, a next image out of the book Le Livre de la Cité des Dames, and maybe you would just tell us more about Pizan. The illustrations, they are very interesting. We also have one detail, so I can switch in between the 2 pictures.
So I want to ask the audience first. Do you all know the content of Le Livre de la Cité des Dames? No. So then I have to explain it briefly. Because otherwise you won't understand this illustration, and as it is book illustration, of course, the text and the image are really interrelated. The story is like this. So Christine de Pizan was, as Elke already explained, a really educated woman. She came from Italy and then had the chance to live at the court of Charles V in France, which was he promoted sciences, he promoted art, he promoted book production and all this. So a wonderful surrounding for this exceptional woman. And I think she was a young girl who wanted to learn, and she read everything what she could get. I think like many of you here as well did. I was also like this. And then we have a frame story of this Livre de la Cité des Dames. Christine de Pizan again is reading, and then she gets so sad and depressed. She is reading Matthäus. Matthäus is an antique author, and he was also a source for the Querelle des Femmes, who spoke about how stupid women are, to make it brief. Stupid and weak in moral aspects and so on, and Christine was so sad. And then she had a vision, and there appeared, and we can see them there, maybe we go to the detail, then there appeared 3 ladies. And they spoke to her and say, what's the matter with you? Why are you so sad? And then she tells them, and then they introduce themselves as, I say it in English, Lady Reason, Lady Rectitude, so we have already an aspect of ethics, and Lady Justice. And they say, you know what, we are going to build a city of ladies. And the whole book is about building this city. So it is, so to say, a kind of allegorical city. I think it is more than allegorical, but first they have to dig the grounds. We see it in the second part of this image. And what does it mean? They have to remove all these prejudices men have about women. So first we have to put all this stuff away to be able to build our city, so like this. And so this is the first, are the first chapters, and then they start to build. You can see already the bricks and the bricks and a bit of the wall. Then they start to build this city, and each brick is a woman from, be it the Bible, be it the mythology, be it history, be it contemporary female important persons. And each chapter of this book tells one of the stories. So it is a book, it has 3 parts. It is a book full of stories what women did for human culture. Yes, and then we have the illustrations. And I want to describe this image a bit, so to show how delicately Christine de Pizan, or better to say the city of ladies masters, so her painter, connected these 2 parts. We have on the left side Christine de Pizan in her studio. She just stood up, we can see still the move in the body, and she has books around her. So we can imagine that she was reading and now surprised because she has these guests here, and they are talking to her. On the other side of the image, we see already Christine de Pizan together with this lady Reason beginning to build this city. So the 2 aspects of this book, reading and studying and learning, being disappointed, learning new things, and then doing something new, completely new. And what for me was so surprising, how these 2 parts are connected. So we have the green grass everywhere, and we have the blue sky. So this life part of studying and learning and reading and writing, and the part of being politically active, so building a city, are connected. And they are connected still more. We have 2 perspectives. The left one goes into the studio, the right one goes to the field. So a perspective like this. And we, as I always say, are fewer readers, so we have to read and we have to look. We don't know, look here, so like this. And there is a third very important point I want to highlight, how Christine de Pizan appears here twice. So on the one hand, we have a move from the left to the right. We have, of course, the same lady again, the same clothes, so we immediately realize that it is the same person who is acting here. And we have this movement from here to there. But we also have a parallelogram in the composition. So, and I write it in the book like this, the world of studying, of reason, of conceptual and so on, and the world of politics, being active, being responsible, are connected. And I can tell you, it's written here, and so at the moment you have to believe me, that all the autographs of Christine de Pizan are designed like this. And all later illustrations from later authors and artists lose this connection. They just show Christine de Pizan and how beautiful she is, or things like this, but not this strong connection between intellectual and political life. Yes, and we see a little bit gold on the ceiling, so she shows us that it is a very important thing to do things like this. So that's just in brief.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. So, yes, I would like to continue with another central artwork in the book, 2 Cities, the knowledge of the limited responsibility society, an installation in the making and ongoing project that you, Irena, started in 2009. The installation has been shown in a number of exhibitions, amongst others in Austria, Denmark, Italy, Serbia. And furthermore, there are several articles by art historians and also curators, and there's only also a very differentiated text by yourself, so it's very recommendable to read, where you examine the theoretical contexts in the course of your artistic research within this project. So very interesting. Yes, Irena, would you let us know more about your conceptual considerations and also your ideas behind this ongoing project, this installation?
Yes, with pleasure, of course, but it is a long story.
So we have time, yeah? So
Yes, I mean, central to this installation is my research in, of course, the connection between art and economy, but also art and other sectors of how societies are built. Of course, also nation state and the question of responsibility of general society, but also of individual in it. And it was the time when I started to approach this material, which constitutes this installation, which is a single fiscal receipt that all of us encounter every day. It is actually the time immediately after Montenegro and the countries in former Yugoslavia have passed through transition period from socialism to capitalism. So broadly speaking, I'm actually also revealing here one detail. I come from a family of economists, and my father is, of course, always commenting a political situation, and not only me, but my whole generation grew with embargo and with the fourth biggest world inflation between 92 and 94, and for us, for my generation, is actually very, very normal to comment and to observe and to discuss when we meet all informations that of course are relevant to all of us, and actually we discuss how to handle these problematic topics while growing up. And it is also interesting that in my generation, also between my female colleagues, it is many of them became later activists, many became famous doctors and so on already. But a couple of us also went into cultural sector, and I started to notice one, I could call it phenomena already, that we were, time and again, we would hear on the radio, on the television, everywhere, these announcements that we are, as all citizens, obliged to pick up our own fiscal receipt and take it with us home, where after whatever we buy, be it bread, coffee, milk, anything, a medicament. And of course, I was just in my first decade of my artistic career, and you know, artists take everything literally. So I took this really as a point of departure, and it was not the only time when I did it. I did it with another material, which is then, of course, connected with this, which is a banknote. One particular banknote later. And of course, gathering all these fiscal receipts over time produced a really huge quantity in my studio. And of course, what I noticed over some maybe months, not even a year, it's a beautiful aspect of this material, is that actually everything which I bought and consumed disappeared and suddenly became a gray paper. Of course, analyzing also this disappearance of our consumed objects in different layers of light, different intensities of light, different times, and so on. And this was the launching moment. So it started, the installation started in 2009. It was the moment when I first exhibited it. But actually, I started to gather these fiscal receipts very early in 2000, when we introduced fiscalization and when we were, as a society, invited very much on all medias of communication to reflect on fiscalization as our responsibility towards the state, of course. And little by little, I decided, and it's not the only work, I did a series of works with fiscal receipts, but first I bound them in books. And it was first shown in Milan in one really interesting exhibition, Little Constellations. Yes, this is
Monika brought it. Here is from Aroma supermarket or pharmacy or bookstore. And of course, from 2009, they already fade out. Even between the closed covers of the book, they are fading out. And what's also interesting that, of course, I must notice what is also written in it, not only our goods that we consume as a society of consumptors, but also what title is it at its beginning. And there I started, of course, to discuss with my family of economists, and they explained me what it means, the society of limited responsibility, how it is rooted in the law, how it is internationally, of course, also distributed. And of course, then I went out on my own research and discovered that it is started to appear in the early 17th century, actually. And of course, there are many layers in which we could find it. And also what struck me is that it is there written on every fiscal receipt, but also these responsibilities that we take home with us, we also encounter at the same time or everywhere on the street. For example, people who take it, they throw it away. They harm the environment, for example. They don't take care of it. So the 2 points here connected, the aspect of the language and importance of words, but also behavior. My own behavior as a citizen is therefore, I became actually over time someone who cleaned streets, picking up these receipts, of course on purpose, and at the moment then also developed one other aspect of this work, which is also ecological. And then, of course, I immediately knew what it is. It is the Society of Limited Responsibility. But when you look this term in English, there is a little bit of terms are changing. It is a limited liability partnership or limited liability company, but in our states of former Yugoslavia, it is not company or partnerships, it is society. So by this I want to bring in the aspect of translation, which for socialist Yugoslavia was very much important in educating the masses after the Second World War. The translation industry was very important also in philosophy, in sociology, in art academies. I mean, whatever was written in Paris was immediately translated in Belgrade or Zagreb. And you could have connections with the key concepts and research even before, of course, internet or before media, mass media of communication like today. So with the wars in Yugoslavia, this was stopped, and I was a student at that time, and as someone who was used to bring literature at home, also through my parents and their colleagues, suddenly this was obvious, visible, that there were no more books. We witnessed the last bookshops closing. There were no more translation companies. We witnessed degradation not only in translation but in culture, in art. There were no more journals and so on. Luckily, in this time, especially in Cetinje, and this is also something what will Elke mention later, luckily we had a different context than in other republics, but we had one international biennial, which was called Cetinje Biennial of Contemporary Art, that was conceived as a link between East and West, as a erasure of this trauma and suffering, as a potential, how to say, collaboration in the years of disaster, so to speak, of ethno-nationalism and of wars. So it was my parallel art school, this this Cetinje Biennial, but nevertheless, I immediately understood and discovered that the limited responsibility partnership society functions in all capitalist states, so it is global. And of course, then I understood that what is crucial there is the question, are we society if we are limitedly responsible? Where is our individual responsibility in relation to our collective responsibility? Precisely, for me, coming from a state that was this dramatically ruined,
and in the age when my generation was most sensitive, as women as well. And therefore, the installations started to be invited. So let's say in last 15 years, it was almost every year somewhere shown. And at the moment, so from first exhibited 9 books, at the moment there are more than 150.
Wow. Okay.
So maybe I stop here.
Yeah, I think we have some other views from this project.
Yes.
Maybe you just, we have some detail and one more, so maybe you want to...
Yes, what I would also add is that this is a composition of course, books, but it's a composition intentionally from my part of a model of a city that grows. And what Monika in her essay puts it, it's a model that you can look from above as a certain model to be researched and potentially learn something from. And to my also desire, the books are so thin, like it is dictated from the form of the fiscal receipt. But when you put them in this quantity, if anything shakes the table, the whole city can fall apart. And of course, it's an installation which is interactive, and visitors can read, can touch the book. It's not a hermetic structure, not at all. And, but it looks hermetic, so I often play with these dichotomies of challenges of artwork. And it is actually challenging for the audience to feel this sense of responsibility toward an artwork in different cultures, toward the aura of the artwork. But of course, not all cultures, not all audiences are willing to interact because they are educated not to touch, not to open, not to question, you know. So these are all these aspects that I try to tackle and discuss with the audiences of this work.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Can I ask something? So
For sure.
I mean, so I'm just really curious. So you have 2 out of these books.
I have 5.
Or you have 5. I mean, 2 we can see. So sorry. So you, I don't know, collectors or people who love your work, they can collect 1 or 2 or 3 or 5. But the number of books keeps growing. So I guess I'm interested in the status of the elements. So the piece is not being sold as a piece of 190 books, but it can be, I don't know, individual pieces. Maybe you can share a little bit how this works. I mean, so the status of a work that keeps constantly changing, how this is being, under the same name, different things are being exhibited. I mean, this is what drives art historians nuts, no? I mean, so it's the same thing, but it's very different. It's not a fixed number. I mean, it sounds very like practical questions, but I think it's really very political questions. What is the status of the work? And how do you define that over time in a certain way?
Yes, it is a political question, and thank you for this putting it, because I didn't fix, and I don't intend to fix certain form of this artwork. It's part of our own common production, and I would even encourage someone to do the same process if he can, if she can, at home. You can continue your collection yourself, for example, because I think that this is really important aspect of our daily lives. When we meet with different materials, how do we reflect on them, especially if something important like the word responsibility or the economical system is behind, or the disappearance as a term, for instance, and it is written in this abbreviation LLP, LLC, SAR, L, and so on, but we do not ever have time to reflect. I had privilege as an artist to take time to reflect, And it is a material with which I work over years, parallelly also with other projects, but it is also a material which opened to me much more sensitivity to other materials, like, for instance, banknote, real banknote, which we will see later. And I know that for this former reason, or culturally or educational reason, or, like you said before, reasons of categorization and archival, it is maybe problematic, but it is precisely this point which I think is important to discuss. It's not that we can always know what is an artwork. It changes with time. It actually changes with discourse, with politics, with the problems that we live, with topics we discuss. And so I just simply write edition of the year when it was. And of course, yeah, I can always count how many there were. We know on the photos that they were here maybe 18, in Linz 19, in Čačak 89, and so on. I mean, I really encourage artists not to be in prison in this formalistic language. And it's also a good question, because thanks to this work, I actually question some more important narratives, like abstraction, for instance. And we can also come later to that.
Yeah, could we briefly come, it brings me to another thought, briefly go back to Christine de Pizan's city building. So if you see the many bricks here, they also have to increase. So we, as the few readers of Christine de Pizan, are also encouraged to add more and more bricks, which means to discover more and more ladies, women, and also encourage other women to build this city together. So we could say, of course, now it is a manuscript and in this image, but the idea is, you see, it is moving there, and it shall grow. That's what I wanted to add to your growing city. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Monika. So I would like to continue and ask some questions to Elke Krasny. You've already been working on Irena's artistic practice, several series, and the issue of limited responsibility, and also the interconnections between the art world and the world of economy. I might cite the title of one of your articles that has been published in 2012, Give a Quote, How to Not Mind One's Own Business, and the not is put in brackets. The topic of ethical responsibility is also very central for the text you wrote for the book Two Cities, and it has the title Becoming Responsible for a Feminist Ethics of Responsibility, and it's also very interesting because you cut the word responsible and put a dash in between, so we have response and able, and maybe you also want to comment this construction and your thoughts behind that. Within the frame of urban conditions, city building, capitalism, and neoliberalism, you ask for the role of critical art and also intellectual thought. And in the sequel, you're focusing on Irena and her artwork, and I may cite out of your text, she calls into question the lack of responsibility through her art. Yeah, so it's a very good statement, I think a very precise statement. So could you tell us more about your notion of the subject of ethical responsibility?
So sorry, we are just whispering. I mean, so in a way, we were just whispering, when did we first meet? And I think it was in 2009 or 2010. And you had a residency at Kulturkontakt, and that's how I got to know of your work. And I will come to all your questions. Yes, I think one of the things that I always find challenging, and I also wanted to speak about that, is I'm very far away from 1405 and writing about things that happened 600 years ago. But I would find that really difficult to write about medieval times. But the longer I am, one could say, a scholar dealing with the present time, the more confusing I find that, because the present time is such a complicated time. We are not in distance to it, we are in it, and it's really hard to make sense of something that you are in. And the other thing I wanted to say is that when we first met, I also immediately understood that you are in a way theorizing your own work very deeply. So it also raises the question: what is then the job of people who are theorists? No, I mean, so when artists are already doing the theory labor, what is it then that one can meaningfully add to this conversation? And how is this then becoming something that maybe also, I mean, what I'm interested in is how the writing about someone and with someone, and we had a longer discussion around this with some of the people who are in the audience here, how does this then kind of feed back into the work someone is doing, so that a text is not this closed, maybe a little bit like the bricks, I mean, so that it's not this closed object and then you close the book and you'll never have to look at it again, but that maybe it can become part of a conversation in the process of what people do who are producing art and making theory and trying to understand the complexities of the present. I mean, making sense of these conditions. And so in a way I would say that the work you have been doing for many years, very insistently, and also I would say not repetitively. So we could say the conditions in 2009, and you were already collecting these receipts that state Gesellschaft mit beschränkter Haftung or society with limited responsibility. I would say they take on a different meaning in relation to the increasing irresponsibility of the world on one hand, and the increasing responsibilization of neoliberal subject formation on the other hand. So in a certain way, even though you've been doing it for a long time, the meaning of what you're doing keeps increasing, changing, responding to these things. And so this is maybe the space in which people who write can then co-inhabit the present moment together with people who are addressing it with finding a formal language or a way of critiquing it. And the question about becoming responsible, I mean, of course, I didn't make up this word at all. I mean, so this is being over and over and overly quoted by feminist and queer feminist scholars. So it's a Donna Haraway term. I think it appears on page 2. So yeah, it's page 2. Staying with the trouble, and people who work in Linz, of course, know the work of translation, and that Karin Harasser has been translating Haraway into German for a long time and is in deep exchange and conversation. And so I think what I like about this word a lot is that, so, I mean, taking apart the word responsible and making it two words, response and able, also talks about how we are being able to respond. I mean, how we are actually, I would say, becoming able to respond to something, but also how the conditions that exist enable people to respond. So I like to think in these ways about this word. And I think, thinking about the books, and you have a city of 5 books at home, and others have more books to take care of in order to understand the amount of limitations of responsibility that are being bound in books and collected. I think it's a very profound accumulation of opening the question how we can become responsible under a regime of economy where we are always being told that responsibility has to be limited in order to protect ourselves as people who are in the economy from being sued, from being held liable. So I think this is in a way what you're navigating in a certain way. So this this in between, the response and the ability. And maybe I leave it here. Maybe we can return to. There were more questions in your question, but I don't want to go on forever, because otherwise we will go through all the things that are in here, and then you'll still be here for a very long time. So we don't want to do that.
Yes, so we definitely should read your text. No. This is one. It's really recommendable too. And one other question I wanted to ask, and you've already been talking a bit about it or introducing this topic. So your notion of ethical responsibility within capitalist societies, and especially the role of critical art and then Irena's art. So what can art do within these complicated structures of capitalism, neoliberalism?
It's for Elke, right, this question. And when are you going to show Witness of Time?
Yes.
I think that's the point.
Yeah, this was also a work I wanted to mention, and because it is also in your text.
I mean, I think the answers to these questions, they live in the works. I mean, so they live in the work that people do, work like yours, but also the work of many others. How staying critical, let's say, not just I'm critical once, but staying with this notion of what it means to be critical, which according to Marxist tradition is to have an understanding of the conditions of society we are living in, and how these mechanisms function, or what they do with us as people. And I think today we would probably add to that what these conditions do with the environment and the planet at large. And you said before that this Biennale in Cetinje that you contributed to was like a parallel art education for you. So you had just finished when you first contributed to this project, Witness of Time now, 22. And maybe you can also explain to us a bit more afterwards what you mean that a Biennale becomes a territory of parallel art education after one has finished one's education, because that also means we don't ever finish, which is maybe part of what I meant with being critical. So it's never finished. I mean, so it's like this ongoing work. I guess what I was interested in relation to this work is, and of course we read work from the situatedness of our existence, I would say. So we can try to inform ourselves what is a Biennale in Cetinje, and what is a Biennale in Venice, and what is a Biennale in I don't know where. And they all have different histories behind them, and they unfold a different meaning. And at the same time, they are part of what we can call the biennialization of the globe. So we can look at them from these different levels of analysis. What I'm trying to say is, I was writing about this living here. I've never been to Cetinje. I mean, so you've been there, so you have a much better understanding. And the writing that we produce comes from somewhere, but also remains, I would say, to a degree on an outside. So I can try to produce a critical text, but it will always be the criticality that is informed by a certain way of thinking about what it means to be critical that comes from thought traditions, but also the way in which processes of gentrification, urbanization, neoliberalization, and how art is entangled with this have been informed by ways of thinking that have not developed in Cetinje. So that's what I'm trying to say. So I'm bringing a certain understanding to this, which may or may not quite definitely match with what the Biennale meant to you as a person, as a very young artist, as continuing your education. And so I was trying to understand what it meant that you were working with a building where people were not living because the building had quite brutally been sold to many people at the same time. So if you sell one apartment to 5 people, it means in the end no one can move in. So we could say it was very limited responsibility that was at work here. And you were using this building in order to make these histories of violence, of capital and invasion visible, we could say, and create evidence. And maybe this is what we can call a very painful and powerful and critical investigation of showing something within the Biennale conditions, but at the same time I would say it also shows the limitations of art. Because of course you couldn't change the conditions that these apartments had been sold to so many people instead of just to one person being the right, what can one say, the owner, that should be able to move in and inhabit. And so this is the work that I had learned about in the trajectory of your work a long time ago. And it's, I mean, they all touch me, but it's one that touches me very profoundly because I think it shows both the criticality and its limitations in a certain way. And I don't know, maybe you want to, so maybe you want to respond a little bit?
Yes, of course. It's precisely on this dichotomy of the limitations of art and the limitation of responsibility of institutions and of people in power and decision makers as well that were the topics I wanted to deal with since the very beginning because of the previously explained context, how I grew up, in which circumstances, what were main discourses discussed, lived, witnessed. And when the occasion of the Cetinje Biennial 4th edition arrived, it was that for the first time artists of Montenegro were able to apply. So I got this participation through a selection jury, and it was why I wanted to do this work. It is because it was called, the topic was reconstruction, but reconstruction after what? After ruined, let's say, ideas, trust in the future, after ruined, let's say, utopias of Yugoslavian socialism, after ruined promises we were as, let's say, pioneers of brotherhood and unity growing up and so on, in which all the ethnic troubles were kind of erased, or we trusted that they are erased. So many topics, many cultural and political topics are under this topic of reconstruction. And in the nature of Cetinje Biennial, it is in its own ontological let's say, process of organization, it is never the world of art that is the target. It is always the ordinary citizen, because it was not made for Western audience, it is made for local audience, and it is, biennial is called only because they had plans to have it every second year. At the end it was like this, in 91, in 94, 97, 2002 and 2004, so it means only these 5 editions when there was possibilities to make it. And of course, parallel education it was, because critical as we all were of my generation in gymnasium, I mean the system made us critical, because we were not blindly following how beautiful the world is out, because we were seeing how Montenegro became a republic of ex-Yugoslavia, who gathered refugees, how people were, of course, traumatized by the war, how many victims there were, and we were very, very awakeningly following this situation, even though it was, and it still is, not in the program of schools and faculties, in official programs. So therefore, I always was aware and sensitive to local histories of people, and this building was really on the street where I was every day going to school. So I knew the people who were living there before, whose houses were built, deconstructed, that they were promised to be given the apartment. So I know the oral history behind this, on this location. And of course, because I was meeting these ordinary people before this building construction was there, of course then I witnessed that it took 17 years of its construction, that it took then another couple of years to solve this problem of couple of times sold apartments to different families, and it was actually we could say today it is the first case of gentrification in Montenegro, whereas today, which finished on the Supreme Court, the solution was done by the court, which today there are so many cases that even the court cannot maybe arrive to these cases. So practically it was, and also what I did, I looked for the people who were there originally living and I photographed them, and also the paradox which I understood was visible, that the building was finished already in 89, but people didn't, not 89, in 2000, but people didn't live in. And also infrastructurally inside, all bedrooms were planned in a way that they look over old city cemetery. So many layers that I really had to research, and that I decided to make this, made this work. And of course, it was not centrally located in the city at all, but in the periphery, which made some troubles for the exhibition. They wanted to move me to another building, but of course I didn't want. It must be in situ with this original building. So there were internal troubles as well in the exhibition. But at the end, I stayed in the original location. And the open shutters of the apartments show to passerbys, to the audience, that apartments are ready to inhabit, but somehow this life never starts to be developed inside. And there are a couple of families who have really existential troubles to start their normal life. And these are such universal topics and such common topics to all of us still today, I think, that it is relevant to speak to them, but it is also relevant to trace their place on the map, like you say in your text, in time and on the map in history, to somehow try to understand whether we will learn from mistakes that we did in the past or not, because of course when our responsibilities are limited, we show that we didn't learn anything.
Yeah, thank you very much, Irena. I would suggest let's linger on the subject of the political and also economic context Christine de Pizan and also you, Irena, have been dealing with in your histories. So on the one hand, we need to consider the situation in France, and I come back to Christine de Pizan. In the beginning of the 15th century, in medieval and early Renaissance Europe, where women were subordinated to a rigid social class system and had mostly less possibilities to get visible. So maybe, Elke, you already mentioned it, Christine de Pizan has been maybe an exception, yeah? An exceptional case, yeah? And on the other hand, it is important to bear in mind also the political history of Montenegro at the Balkan Peninsula. And Irena, you already told several aspects of your own history growing up with the difficult situations and contexts that are very important also for your artistic practice. So within this context, maybe some basic data about Montenegro, only to keep it in mind. Montenegro became one of the 6 republics of the Communist Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia after the Second World War. And following the breakup of Yugoslavia, the republics of Serbia and Montenegro proclaimed a federation, and in 2006 Montenegro declared its independence from Serbia. So the country harks back at several tremendous transitions and upheavals. And so it would be interesting also from your side, and you already mentioned several aspects, in what ways are these political and also economic transitions and the everlasting effects that you feel until today relevant for your artistic practice. And you also brought some other artworks, so I may go to another slide. We have here my father's salary, so, and another...
Now we have the money.
The money, yeah, so we go to the money.
So a part of the fiscal receipt that, of course, I already explained, these layered topics and discourses that are summarized under this economical term, limited responsibility society. Here, actually, we can see another material, which is a banknote. But maybe I can first tell you, if you go to a next slide, because it is not one more. Yes, because here it is the first time that I actually used the banknote as material, and it was in the context of when it first time became international, the exhibition Memorial of Nadežda Petrović in Čačak in Serbia, during the time, I mean, immediately after the referendum, where on one banknote of 200 dinars, it was still written the word Yugoslavia, even though it didn't exist any longer. So this fact really took my all attention, and I researched, and also what was interesting is that we could hear on the radio very often the announcement that every citizen that has this banknote with this word can use it until 2012, when it will finally be changed the name of the state on the banknote, and this edition will be completely destroyed. So some parallel facts really struck me. What is this political shifts and changes and sensitivities in the context of the public space, in the context of the economy, in the context of culture, somehow how they are puzzled in certain moments, like in the case of the banknote on which an artist, Nadežda Petrović, is portrayed. First, in the case of this artist, we should remember that she was not only the artist, she was also a nurse in the First Balkan War and Second Balkan War, and then also she is still today considered one of the most interesting female artists on the Balkan. Not only that she has also researched her own political convictions about the unification of peoples and not separations of peoples, but also that she has worked in painting as impressionist and then as post-impressionist, as expressionist as well. So she has this long trajectory of her art through painting, medium of painting, and suddenly in the 21st century, she appears on a public space like a banknote. It's a public monument to a woman. It's important to me that she's the first woman in our region to appear as an intellectual. Previously, and now we can go back to my father's salary, we can stay with this detail. Previously, in the 90s, female reproduction, representation on the banknote was anonymous. And at the moment, I'm also anonymous figures. We don't know who is the girl, we don't know who is the older girl. She appears on a banknote, strangely enough, on which reverse there is a plant, like a field of wet field plants. And this relation also to women and the field, the agriculture, and all these contexts can also show us how in certain decades we were still not, I mean, women was still not treated, deserved the attention to appear on the banknote as an intellectual. It happened first with Nadezhda Petrović. But in the case of Nadezhda Petrović, which is brilliantly put in an essay by Mileta Prodanović, two coincidences happened, that the state for which unification she fought fell apart. I mean, it was changed the name of the state, so we have kind of a reduction from unification, from a certain kind of, let's say, social utopia, we have reduction to degradation, to, let's say, getting smaller and smaller on the topics of shared responsibility, so to speak. And my father's salary gathers in between covers of a book, really a salary of my father from 92, for which he couldn't buy anything. He just received it and put it somewhere, and he found it after 20 or something years, after I did the banknote with the work after memory with Nadezhda Petrović portrait on the banknotes. And then he told me for my birthday, well, I could not afford you anything with this when you were 17. Maybe now you can do something with it. So it's, of course, then also the question of a material that we all use together and how to rethink. This is also coming back to Elke's question, where is this limitations of responsibility of an artwork, and also I would add that I'm very much interested into these potentials of everybody doing artwork, everyone being an artist, really literally, of feeling these potentials of taking things more seriously and producing something. And why not also gathering into the installation, knowledge of the limited responsibility society, someone else's book, you know, in order to see that actually the production of our common responsibilities should take place.
Okay, so yeah. I don't want to interrupt you, so thank you very much. So I continue maybe with you, Elke. In your text, you mentioned the concept of the politics of location introduced by Adrian Rich. So it would be very interesting, and you have already been touching this topic a bit before. Maybe you could explain it, what it means, and how you would relate it to Irena's artistic practice.
I mean, I think it's a concept that was developed in order to point out that we always, as I said before, we speak from somewhere, or from many different somewheres, and that a location is not just a place on a map, as Adrian Rich writes, but it's also a point in time or in history, and how to, I guess, acknowledge that we are responding to somewhere and somewhen in our writing, but that we are also putting it in conversation with multiple elsewheres. I think these are the challenges. I guess I've spoken about it before. I mean, so in a way, what does it mean to be here and to write about a work that one has never seen, yet tries to develop a contemporary understanding for and with, and to not so to acknowledge that locations make works different, but at the same time not to essentialize work because it's from somewhere. So not to say work from Vienna in 1907 looks like this because it's from Vienna, and work from Cetinje in 2002 looks like this because it's from Cetinje. So I think it's precisely that one has to navigate the responsibility towards acknowledging that different moments in time and different locations require people to kind of account for that, but at the same time that their work is not being defined by that, or not being reducible to the location from which, against which, through which, around which one is working or thinking or doing things.
Yeah, thank you very much. And in the end...
Please stay before.
I should stay here? Okay, yeah. I come to you, Monika, and so it's also my last question to my panel guests. How would you describe the misogynist and therefore very difficult context Christine de Pizan was living in and with? How did she deal with these deadlocked social structures and the economic position of women? What could she succeed in, maybe? Yeah?
Thank you. I want to go one step back, reacting to you both. I like your word navigate. And the second term that's very important for me is point of view. Of course, it's Thomas da Costa Kaufmann. We all have a point of view, and that's the only possibility how we can look. So I think dealing with artistic positions from different centuries, countries, locations, contexts, and so on, we always have to make clear, so what is my point of view? I am looking at these pieces, and what are my questions? So, a bit methodological remark. Of course, you can imagine, when I discovered this book in your studio in Cetinje, I was trembling. So, we have a book, and we have a woman in this book. And we have so many women, it's always the same. And then it's called After Memory, so we have memory. And you see, for Christine de Pizan, this memory is so important. So dealing with this memory of women history, so as a power. And the first time I tried this discourse between your work and Christine de Pizan with this responsibility question was in the Nadezhda Petrović Museum in Čačak, while you had your exhibition, Their Expanses of Love. So we tried it first. How could it work to, make the threads between so different worlds? And now we can come to Christine de Pizan, please. Of course, it's not possible to discuss now the economic and political situation of France about 1405, so we don't have the time, but I think you have a bit an idea. So this change from Middle Ages to Renaissance, and what does it mean for economy? What does it mean for the possibilities of women and all this? A lot of research is done meanwhile about this, and also a lot of female researchers, historians, and economics, and so on. What I want to show you is how Christine de Pizan is dealing with this situation. And again, this is now Le Trésor de la Cité des Dames, so the treasure of the City of Ladies. So we have a treasure. We have Irena's money book, and here we have a treasure. And maybe let's go to the details so it's easier to describe the picture. So, what it is about. Le Trésor de la Cité des Dames is, so to say, a second volume of Le Livre de la Cité des Dames. And it is more, so Le Livre de la Cité des Dames, I would say, is the more intellectual book, so reconstructing history. And Le Trésor is the more practical book, speaking explicitly to the women of her time. And what we see here is, again, the two parts of a picture. It is the same artist, the City of Ladies master. And on the left side, Christine is in her bed, and it was normal to welcome people also in your bedroom. This was a custom then. And yes, she looks a bit tired and weak and so on. And we have again the three ladies from the other book, and they are the same ladies. And what are they doing? They are pulling her. Get up! You have to write another book. So of course, we all are exhausted after writing a book. I think you all know this, or realizing an exhibition or whatever, so realizing a project. And we are tired, and then they come again, you have to continue. And now we see in the second part how she continues. What we see here now is a learning situation. In the middle is Lady Prudence, so another way of knowledge, and maybe you realized already that Christine de Pizan does not deal so much with modesty or the caritas as love and helping and like this. She is more dealing with the intellectual qualities, so reason and like this, and on the other side, justice. So these are the virtues she is promoting, and in this case it's another way of reason. And this prudence means more the worldly wisdom. So reason is more this theoretical ground and reflection, and this is more the concrete knowledge and how to deal within your life. And what makes it so interesting, you see an assembly of women, and they are learning. And when you look at their costumes, and this is so a very important point when you're dealing with manuscript illustration, each detail is important, of course. And these are small, of course it is in a book, so you see so many details. And you can see each one is different. Some have crowns, some are very modest, and so. And what is it? It is an assembly of women of the different social ranks. So from lower ranks like prostitutes, about going up, merchant women, till to princesses and kings. And what does Christine de Pizan say by this? She says, all of you have your specific responsibility. Being a prostitute is another responsibility than being a merchant woman or being a teacher or being a king. So the different responsibilities within society. And by this we can again see, and you see I am really fascinated about Christine de Pizan, how she is dealing with, we have hierarchies. We are in a situation that book production is, of course, a workshop production. Before it was in the cloisters, now it is more in the profane world. And women and men are engaged in this. So we have this beginning economics, but of course we still have hierarchies. And Christine de Pizan does not write a book about hierarchies like this, but she writes a book speaking to the women and say, take your responsibility. And to write a book like, okay, you have to do this and you have to do that, we know from medieval book production, so it is the mirror of princes, Prinzenspiegel in German. And we know it more in the male context, so that the books tell them young men, so how they have to behave in society. And they just speak to the upper classes. And what does Christine? She uses this genre that's well known, but she speaks to women, and she speaks to women of all classes. And I think that's revolutionary.
Yeah, thank you, Monika. So we have one last manuscript, so I don't know if you would like to give us a small comment also on this one.
Sure. First about the whole page, you see it is a similar structure of illustrating. So a half-page picture. And it is from the Queen's manuscript, or Harley, 4431, it's in London. And this is a collected volume, and it is so interesting because Christine de Pizan wrote about 40, 42, 45 books, smaller books and bigger books. So she had to live. earn her money by writing, but she also had to say a lot. And the books are of different topics, politics, political writings, juridical writings, and often allegorical stories, and these two, Le Livre de la Cité des Dames and Le Trésor de la Cité des Dames. They were very common in her period, so people, especially women, appreciate it very much. And in this collected volume is now dedicated to the Queen. Let's go to the next one. And here we can see, and this is the link to what we are doing with this book. So she was not just a writer, but she was also a publisher. And she was also taking care how to bring the book to the important people. So, so also promoting, writing, publishing, promoting, so everything. And in this case, she is presenting her collected volume to the Queen, so the Princess of France. And we see a normal situation. The Queen is welcoming her and her court around her. And so now we can ask, who is the main person? Of course, socially speaking, it is the Queen. If we look at the composition, I think it is Christine de Pizan. She is in the middle of the image. The perspective again going to the center, at the back, there's the window. So the light from the window is coming to Christine. Christine is kneeling, so that was what she has to do when she visits a queen. But if you look at the height of the persons, she is almost as big as the other ones. So, in fact, she would be much bigger if she would get up. So, I wanted to have this picture as the last one of this presentation today and talk, to show also the self-confidence of doing her work. Yes, and by this I would... Maybe we could go to the book. Yeah. You see, we all have it in hand, and there are some samples over there. And the book is, so, the artist is in Cetinje. I am working in Linz, but I wrote this book in Basel, you know, navigating. And Christine de Pizan is in Paris. The layout was done in Podgorica by Ivana. Yes, so we worked together between, I don't know where, and Podgorica, and the production was in Austria. And I think Ivana did a wonderful job by layouting it. There is first a part Christine, then I think once more, yeah. And then there is a huge part, Irena Lagator here. And there of course, the question, an aesthetic approach to ethical responsibility, nobody can answer it, especially not in such a small book. But what I offer and what we try is to navigate between these different artworks, and to involve also the viewer readers to take their responsibility in reading and then taking your responsibility. And here are a lot of, we couldn't show everything today, this evening. On the one hand, this project of Responsibility Society, there are more, and more or less all your books, more or less. And the content is like this. We have this introduction by Miško Šuvaković, and I love his text. He is, so to say, in a very delicate way, he asks, what does this woman do, being in Linz, being in Basel, writing about this and writing about that, and you are in books and in cities and in different economics. So what is she doing? And he speaks about a rebus, and I don't tell you now how he solves this rebus. Then there's my text. Yes, this dialogue between these artworks, and then there is your text with this focus on, yes, ethics from a queer feminist point of view, so to say, like this. Yeah. So, thank you. You want to have the last word, maybe?
So I just wanted to ask if you have one last comment on the book, and no? Okay.
The book is
So,
there.
okay, the book is over there.
Take a look.
Yeah. So I would like to thank you for these very vivid discussions, very interesting topics, and so I would be interested now if there are some questions by the audience, and so I would like to open up this discussion in the room, and I see a very second questions, yeah, 2 questions. So I think she was first, and then you, yeah.
I'm not she. Yes, okay. I was really wondering about this društvo ograničene odgovornosti, and I think in your work it really derives like društvo as a factory, which I think we haven't explained it through the self-managed socialist system. So društvo as a company, aka factory, and like Gesellschaft, like society. It's a single word that unites those 2 levels of making the society through your labor in the factory. And I think then this shift, which in my understanding, now that I have heard like also your comments and the way you discuss this and knowing you from before, I somehow feel this profound notion of mourning. It's not nostalgia, I wouldn't say, for the country that doesn't exist, that could have been something else, that could have been something that you would expect it to continue somehow, but it's not nostalgic, it's like more mourning like moment. Like maybe you could comment something more about this društvo and this relation between like society building through your work or place in the society, which got transformed then into because it's not like neoliberal system. It's a transformation from the socialist system to something else. And you are mourning for that other thing. But that's just my understanding of this. And I would also wonder about your T-shirt. That's also something which is a very symbolic thing. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jelena. Well, društvo, I think you really pointed a very important question, because first I mentioned the translation industry in ex-Yugoslavia was really important. We were very accurate and very updated with philosophical concept discourses that were developing everywhere, also on political discourses, and we could read them in our own language. But then why I started this also research, and I visualized it also in the reproductions are in the book, not here in slides. It is true what you say, it's not nostalgia. It is a kind of mourning, but I would more say mourning for not have learned enough from what we had, what we've been, what our dreams were, what our system was, what our behaviors were. I mean, drugarica is a comrade, and it's not a factory, it's not a product. Maybe that's a good point that I feel today we somehow expect from friendship to be a product or something, or there are results, interests. There is always some, let's say, further perspective on the horizon why we know that we are doing things. I mean, we didn't grow up in that way. We have these really close friendships. I mean, for us, cousins were brothers and sisters, not cousins, you know. And drug is comrade, drugarica is comrade with which you are very close. There were, in this structure of self-management, there was this more, let's say, a close feeling of sharing thoughts, ideas, dreams, fears, preoccupation, responsibility in different levels of, and all social classes. Monika has brought here a catalog of exhibition in which we tried this model of a book, which is called Expenses of Love. But expense, it's also play of words. Expense is an economical expense, not expansion like widening the borders, but expenses of love. Love here is took from one precisely important book, which I, again, discovered during pandemic when people were really paranoically selling out all old libraries, especially self-management and socialist Yugoslavia titles, like, of course, they don't use them anymore, they won't use them anymore, so at least they can profit in this COVID situation from book selling. And in this book selling, I found this title, Expansions of Love, which is a gathering of texts, poems, and observations from children about what future for them means. And in this one book, I have found a poem from one, let's say, 13-year-old girl who today is a scientist, an environmental protection scientist, who wrote a poem, and she says, the title is, If I Would Be Ronald Reagan. So imagine a girl who imagines a power structure, and she speaks about the cutting weaponization, industrialization of the weapons, and eternal peace on earth. And this is the title of the exhibition, and also another, which is on the cover, another important work which actually illustrates, is a response to your question, is the Workers' University. These are all small booklets. It's a very, let's say, wide, in space wide, 12 meters and 7 meters long piece on the wall, which from far away looks like abstraction, but when you come closer, it's not. It's actually small essays, very short essays from scientists about everything you should know in society as a worker, about abortion, about family, about child psychology, about astronomics, about solar system, about Nietzsche, about Robespierre, whatever. I mean, political philosophy. And in from 49 until beginning of 70s, this edition of Workers' University was printed, which later on, from 80s, has become books in the gymnasium because of its quality. I mean, imagine something that was studied so profoundly well and communicated to masses for free, to get them educated in their free time, and these were pocket editions that you had this already immediately after the war, so Second World War. So through this analysis, I actually see similar profound concerns of our today's society. How can we recover from different problems that we are facing today? So it's not mourning that much as it is trying to relearn, even though, of course, there are important layers to forget, like mistakes, political wrong decisions, and so on, of which, of course, we should speak. But nevertheless, majority of the decisions, of the feeling of people were very positive and progressive.
Okay, there has been, is there some answer or, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, yes, yes, you asked also about this image. It's the, let's say, abstract form of the Museum of Contemporary Art in Belgrade, which is a very iconic building by Igor Antić, who actually was built in early 60s as a building that actually was a space for introduction of modernism in Yugoslavia. And this is crucial. I love this space very much, but I also, much more than space, love this idea how these societies wanted from everything to make their own version. So practically it was the socialist modernist architecture that we are speaking when we speak about this building, and many others, of course.
Hi, thank you very much for this evening. I have now like 3 questions. I had 2 before. But they're maybe short and very simple. The one I wanted to ask now, because of the Workers' University, who decided what knowledge would have to be learned? This knowledge production, also what society should learn then? And then is my question, what would you think of this you want to relearn also, like this decision of which kind of knowledge, for example, production should be distributed? And then the other question I would have to Monika is an understanding question. If Cristina de Pizan not only wrote the books, but also she illustrated them. This is, I didn't get this point actually, because also you told then about other illustrations. So I was confused by this part. And also when she wrote, when you were saying that Le Trésor de la Cité des Dames, that she was talking about the responsibilities of all the women in all classes. Could all of them read the books also? Because you were talking about that she was part of a very elite and class. So how did she think of other classes, and how are they reproduced also in this book? Yeah, thank you.
Maybe you first, because then it's collected. Yes, it's a very interesting question about who decided what knowledge should be learned in late 40s, in the, let's say, formation of socialist Yugoslavia. In the practice, there are many, of course, splits, different political decisions, like famous Tito-Stalin split, for instance. And also we should mention kind of communism. It's not the same, there is not one communism, of course, and not one socialism. So therefore there was a scientific committee that decided, committee of scientists. They were all mainly PhD professors who wrote, and committees who selected which titles, and they had chains. There was philosophy, astronomy, physics, scientists, mathematics, family, psychology, this Workers' University. So, of course, it was very difficult, and it lasted for more than 20 years, and later it transformed into another word and thought, which was even more popular, but it was like edition, which is much more wider in content and much more, let's say, already you could buy them in the bookstores, Word and Thought, whereas the Workers' University was not for buying. It was for free, delivered into factories, in schools, for the use of the people in free time. And there are many also other stories, like Train of Culture, that traveled through different, with books, through Croatia, and it is also something which I'm researching for educating people in remote areas, and so we had a lot of these social actions that dealt with education, and it was always a committee of professors at universities, and of course not private, back then not yet private sector.
Okay, to your questions, can we may go back to Le Livre?
Okay.
This one, yes. Okay. Your question about who did the illustrations. Yeah. In the case of this book, so this one autograph, we know that Christine de Pizan wrote parts of the book, so this is for sure. So we know her handwriting, and parts of the book are written by her. But other parts are written by other persons, so as book production was workshop production, so that's normal. The other question is, who is the artist? And this is very difficult because we are still in the period where we don't have names, so therefore we have the city of ladies master, so like this. And we don't know if he, she is a male, female, or what else. I discussed this question here in this book because there is an interesting research about it. So the most common researcher about the French manuscript painting of this time is Millard Meis. He wrote 5 or more volumes about the books. There is such a lot of fantastic manuscripts. And he also speaks about Le Livre de la Cité des Dames. And of course, he also doesn't know who is the City of Ladies Master. We know that this City of Ladies Master illustrated a lot of books of Christine de Pizan. So we have him, her in Le Trésor, we have him, her in the Book for the Queen, and others. And we also know that this artist is an artist of high quality. So, of course, also book illustration where the stars and also the more common ways of illustrating, sometimes also black and white and like this. And City of Ladies Master was very appreciated. So what we can at least say that Christine de Pizan chose for her book a very good artist. Now about sex and gender of this artist. This Millard Meis discusses the question, and in Le Livre de la Cité des Dames we also read about Anastasia. And Anastasia was an important artist during Christine's lifetime. So, of course, we are thinking, many thought already about it, so maybe Anastasia is this City of Ladies Master. It's just a question of research, we can't answer it. But how does Millard Meis, so this expert of this book illustration, discuss it? He says, yes, it might be that this Anastasia also did some in these paintings, but if she did, maximum the landscape backgrounds, not the central scene. Because in his brain is the story, developing the story, designing this story, doing this conceptual work. This can't be a woman. Can't be a woman. If she has, this famous Anastasia has done something, then the grass is in the foreground, like this. And since Millard Meis, everybody in German writing speaks about the City of Ladies Master as a he. And what I do in the book is that I say, I think she is a she. And then I write, this English is like this. I think when Christine de Pizan, who is so, this is not my opinion, but Millard Meis has another opinion, I have another opinion. We don't know. And
he's dead, no?
He's dead. So. No, I can.
He can't really say anything.
No, he can't. But I think he didn't even get this point in mind that it might be a woman who did these wonderful illustrations. And that's how our art historical writing works. So I think we have much more female artists in history, we just don't know. And then we say it is a he if you don't know. Yeah. And now I lost the
last question. If the people depicted were able to read the book?
Yes, exactly, thank you. Now we have to go to the classroom. So, also here I have to say we don't know who could read the books. I can now, from my dealing with this period, make some remarks. The one is Christine de Pizan was in touch with people from different social ranks, male and female people. We know it also from her correspondences. And we know that in book production, male and female, and we know that book production was workshop production, and of course, luxury manuscript like this was in the libraries of the kings and like this. It was like a huge art piece, incredibly expensive. So these manuscripts like this were treasures, and common woman would never be able to buy it. But as we know, now in this case some more. And that's what the point where I wanted to come now. We know that soon after there was published this book, they started to do copies. There are still 5 of Le Livre de la Cité des Dames autographs are still remaining, so we can imagine there were much more. And I imagine that many of these copies maybe were not illustrated, so they were cheaper, or illustrated just in black and white, just to give a bit idea like this. And if we go to this lower expensive level, then it might be possible that also women read it. Women were educated, so we don't need to think that women were analphabetic. No, that's wrong. So I think it communicated by oral communication and maybe by copies that are not that luxury as this one. With this one, she made a statement. A statement to the responsible people in societies. Aber das sage ich nach dem Applaus.
Okay, so I would. Is there one more question? Yeah.
I have a follow-up question. I just want to.
I think the last question.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, because looking at the
To
times.
Monika, do we know how far it distributed the text? Were there texts about these texts that showed up in maybe different European areas,
Yeah.
or okay?
All over Europe, and rather fast. And what's also interesting that they were reproduced as long as there was handwriting. Then there are also with book printing copies that spread all over Europe. Then Christine de Pizan was forgotten. She was rediscovered in the 19th century when France became a nation, and then realized we have such an important writer. And since then, rediscovery began, and then she was again rediscovered in the 1970s with feminism. So, and since then, research is spreading more and more. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I would suggest, looking at my watch, we can have some more private conversations later on. Thanks a lot to you, Elke, Irena, and Monika, for discussing and making this evening so vivid and beautiful. I think we learned a lot, and thank you also to the audience here in the depot and also in the YouTube live stream for joining us and asking all the questions. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And now, as the live stream is switched off, I can tell you that today we can offer you the book for a